Welcome to this next session as part of this webinar series. My name is Dominic Williamson, and I'll be covering learning management systems and Microsoft Teams better together. I'm a program manager within the Teams for Education product group, and if you'd like to stay in contact with me, definitely please do reach out and connect with me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Dominic Will IT, so DOMINIC, Will IT, at Twitter, and this is a great way to be able to see some of the latest announcements as we make them and also ask me questions after the session today. Now, one of the big things that I did want to also highlight is absolutely please do ask questions within the session if you're watching it live right now. This is where we will have an opportunity for you using the message window to ask a question. And if you are watching this on demand, feel free to always still reach out to us as part of the public community forum that we do have at the website URL aka.ms/techcommunityteams.edu. If you type in that URL into your browser, you'll be taken straight to the forum for Teams for Education. Now, really where this session is going to be focused on is teaching and learning and how your LMS can work directly with Teams and how we see it being successful to enable then collaboration and communication with those key workflows around resource management and assignments. Where this is an extremely important conversation is where we see the power of Teams coming to life at schools, universities, and colleges to give them a single hub across many different aspects of staff and student life experience and also workflows within the organization. And so what I mean by that is Teams uniquely connects everybody across teaching and learning, student life and campus work, operational staff and administrative staff, and researchers if we start to think about higher education. This is really where Teams is unique in that it can bring all of these different groups of people together in a singular place. For the purposes of the session today, we're going to be talking about teaching and learning and a few use cases around how we can do things like course delivery within Teams, the ability to provide students meaningful feedback to help them as part of their learning, and the ability that we've seen with Teams to do online lectures, whether it's one-on-one within small groups or hundreds of students coming together. Teams is a powerful online learning platform. And how does this platform then interact with the rest of Office 365? Well, it really brings to life the different capabilities of both Teams and Office 365 in a singular view for your end users. When we think about how does this map to then some of the common scenarios within a teaching and learning example like course delivery or having a classroom, how do you manage things like your course materials? Well, this is where SharePoint is a powerful way to be able to manage resources, but again, in an easy fashion with the Teams interface over the front. You've also got the ability to do things like online lecture capture and then lecture delivery with the ability of Teams to be able to then automatically save recordings directly to Microsoft Stream. That content is then available on demand for you, giving you a powerful video platform unique to your organization. And certainly as we see things about making sure students are on task and in the right place at the right time, managing assessments, the ability for Teams to have assignments, calendars, and of course creating cohorts are all then different capabilities that we see are incredibly powerful. And then bringing it all together to give real-time data insights. This is where you can leverage tools like Power BI to be able to get holistic insights into your organization. So how do we then see this being used to then complement a learning management system? Well, this is really where Teams is incredibly powerful to be that single hub to bring together people wherever there is a need to communicate and collaborate. When we think about this in a course context, this can be then how do you as a teacher or as an educator make an announcement to your students, encourage active learning communities, support things like student group work in a tool that also will develop job-ready skills for them. Where it's extremely powerful is then the LMS providing then the content repository, management of learning resources, and if you have existing assignment workflows, absolutely to then be able to use those within your current LMS today. Now, all LMSs, there are different ways that we can see them being used with Teams, and that's what we're going to cover as part of this presentation. But there's a fantastic example with the Moodle app that is recently available, which allows you to then also see what does it look like when there is an app dedicated for your LMS within Teams. Now, the fantastic thing about Teams is it's an open platform. So this means just like your smartphone, you've got the ability to then have providers around the world be able to create app integrations, We would love to see as many LMSs as possible create apps for Teams. So if you are looking for an app and you don't see it in the App Store today, I strongly encourage you to reach out to that provider, to that developer, and ask them to bring an app to Teams, because this is an open, inclusive platform. And what we're also then doing, in addition to having that open store, which of course we review and make sure is safe and secure for content before it is made publicly available to users of Teams, we have then behind the scenes the ability for you to have automation tools to be able to automatically then sync class rosters and automatically create class teams and staff teams, just like you would expect within the context to keep your LMS and Teams in sync. And so this is one of the most important concepts to be comfortable with and aware of going forward, which is really just like your learning management system today, regardless of which one you're currently using. That LMS, the student information system which it is interacting with to be able to pre-create classes and courses, that concept is identical in Microsoft Teams. So what you see here is your student information system will, of course, have your course rosters. It'll manage which students are associated with which class, which teachers or instructors will be delivering that class. And then that is then regularly exported directly to your LMS to be able to then pre-create those classes and courses, so that way the educator can focus on teaching the course. Now that concept is identical, and this is where we then have tools available, so you can also then, from that same single source of truth that your LMS is using, take that data and also automatically create class teams, so that way the rosters are in sync between any LMS and Teams, because they are both pulling their data from the same single source of truth, which is your student information system. Now the great news about this is we then have no code scenarios available where you can use free services like School Data Sync to be able to automate that import directly into Office 365 and Microsoft Teams. And for those who have additional requirements and would like further customization of your automation, this is absolutely where we have then a rich suite of tools available with the Microsoft Graph API to automate each aspect of the team creation. But as I mentioned, for those who are looking then for an out-of-the-box solution, and again, this is available for free, using School Data Sync will allow you to then be able to then sync your Microsoft Teams and Office 365 classes directly with your student information system. SDS can import from 70 different student information systems, including PowerSchool, OneRoster. Almost any student information system is supported, provided that it does a CSV export. So this is an extremely powerful way that you can then automate over a period of time that you define to be able to then automatically have classes not only provisioned, but that the course rosters are kept in sync and up to date. And it can also do some very powerful things like also associating existing users and even license assignment. When you automatically create a class using SDS, in this example, a maths algebra class, what's happening within Teams is the teachers are being assigned as the team owners, the students are the members, it's creating a class team type. And what it's also doing is then it will define when that class is available for students to interact with the class. And so this is where you've got the ability then, of course, at the end of the class to define when is the end date for it. And then this is where you can look to, for example, retire the class and archive it. For those who have more requirements beyond having then an automated out-of-the-box solution, maybe you need to customize your teams or you want to have a specialized template for different courses. This is where the Microsoft Graph APIs allow you to automate each step of the Office 365 and specifically Microsoft Teams lifecycle. So within Teams, we have a Graph API for create a team, add members and owners, configure team settings, add channels, install apps, add tabs, and then at the end of that period, for example, the end of semester, the ability to archive or delete that team. And so this is where the Graph is an incredibly powerful tool to allow you to then define templates, where you can then, in addition to having the ability to just create a generic class team, you can define what does that class team actually look like once it's been created as a single piece of code that you've defined. And so here it's simple, it's just writing some JSON. So for example, display name is the name of the course, description is the description for the course. But what this has done is when we run it, allows us to now have consistency across our different classes and courses. Not only is it then predefining channels, but it's also adding in the applications and tabs as part of this class experience. And so you've seen here it's automatically pre-added Polly, which is a great app to allow easy polls, so that way you can get real-time feedback from students or other members of the team. And immediately without the teacher having to click install, Polly is immediately there, so that way you can see at Polly, it creates real-time polls, and it's now allowed the teacher to be able to focus on the activity. In this case, it might be getting some feedback from students. One of the things to keep in mind is right now, this is where you do still need to click the setup button when you have the tabs pre-pinned. But what this has again done is it's created consistency, and the nice thing is Polly is still then working correctly because it was already pre-installed, so that way it did capture the poll just there. Now you'll see here I've clicked on a tab called Canvas. What this is a website tab. So this is now the web view, just like if you were to go into a browser of Canvas. And so this is where I can then see the courses that I have access to and that I should be able to see because I've logged in with the same account credentials that I would log in to access Canvas in the web browser. I can then also pre-populate other apps such as the YouTube app, and again just give a consistent set of content for my students to be able to review across their classes. You'll see here I've just also now added a series of students using the Graph API, so now I can then manage that class roster, and the School Data Sync service does a similar thing automatically for you. Last but not least, really powerful as I've got the ability to then also post a message to my students automatically. So you could have a consistent welcome message, for example, posted to all courses across the organization using then the Graph API commands. So what does it then look like to embed an LMS like Canvas or Blackboard or something else? Really, the only requirement here is that it has a website view of that LMS today. And if you do have a web view for your LMS, this is where you can go and click on the plus sign to add a new tab. When you go to new tab, you'll see there you've got the ability to click website. That website can be any website that you name. And so this is where right now we're going to replace the name website with Blackboard or Canvas as the example, and then simply post in the URL to be able to then access the web view for that LMS. Once I've done that, you'll see here I've now got that web view called Canvas. I've added in the URL to access it. I log in again with my normal username and password, and then this shows me the view of the LMS that I have access to because I've now authenticated. Where we can take things even further is if you have one of the LMSs that's part of our education partners, which is really powerful as part of what the OneNote class notebook provides within Teams. You've got the ability to then sync grades. And so this is extremely powerful. If you go to onenote.com/edu partners, you can see a list of the LMSs that are supported here. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see just a few of them in that preview window: Canvas, Capita Sims, Edmodo. Once you go through and select your LMS, this is where you've now got the ability from the class notebook in the team to create an assignment using the class notebook pages. And then you can also grade that assignment and have those grades sync back to the LMS. So let me show you an example of what that looks like. So here we are, we can see an example of how do we actually set up the OneNote class notebook to sync grades to one of those supported LMSs. So as part of this, you'll have the ability then, you'll see here, I'm currently in Teams on that Canvas website tab, looking at the grades for my students. And so we'll see Economic Weekly Analysis Week 3, Week 4, and so on. Where this is extremely powerful is I'm now going to go over to the class notebook. Again, this is a OneNote class notebook, which is automatically created as part of a class team. As a quick tip, always make sure you expand the view. So that just gives you a little bit more screen real estate to be able to focus your work. For those that are new to a OneNote class notebook, the powerful thing about this is OneNote is an incredibly flexible tool to be able to then share content, whether it's text, images, handwritten notes. And the class notebook predefines then a section, a collaboration space, a content library, and then a private space for each of my students. As the teacher, I can see all of my students, but students can only see their own view. So for example, Ella cannot see anyone else's. You'll see here I click on the Connections tab, and I've signed already into one of the supported LMSs as part of the class notebook connections. I go through, select my course, make sure it's also correctly mapped to students. You'll notice there Rosie isn't mapped, and so this is why it's so important that you do have a regular sync with your student information system and the class notebook. So I should say, with the team. So that way things are kept up to date, and then you've got your team automatically able to then do these mappings. Now, what are we going to do? Well, we have a weekly assignment that our students need to complete, and it's an economic analysis. Right now, we're going to do our week 5 economic analysis, create an assignment, and then distribute this to our students. So what you'll see here is I simply go, again, this is all staying in the OneNote class notebook inside of Teams, create assignment. I'll go through, you'll see it's picked up the title, it's picked up the task, which is written on the page. I can define the due date, I can define the total number of points that this is worth, and you can even lock the page so students will not be able to edit the OneNote note page once it's past the due date. One of the important things is, again, each student has a private section, and I gave each of these students, I defined this. So this is where each of the students has their own private weekly market analysis where they will be doing their work. And again, they cannot see each other's work. Simply click Create. And what this will do is distribute it out to all of the other students. Now, I simply go through and review my student work. The class notebook has some fantastic tools built in to save teachers time. And so what this allows me to do is I can jump straight to my students from that review tab. And when I click on a student's name, such as Ella, I can see directly the page that she's completed. When I click on Enter Grades, I can have a look at the work that she's done. I think she's done a pretty good job with her supply-demand curve. She's going to get 80 out of 100 as her grade for this weekly assignment. And you'll see here, grades submitted successfully. Now I'm going to head back over to Canvas. And I've just done a little bit of editing for the speed of time, and I've jumped straight back to the gradebook where you can see here we're at 80 out of 100, which is the grades that we had just put in for that week 5 analysis, which we had distributed. And again, this was all from the class notebook directly inside of Teams. So you've seen now examples of how you can automate Teams so it has a class roster that stays in sync with your LMS. You've seen how you've got the ability to use the website tab to embed a web view of your LMS. And we've also then been able to take advantage of some of the powerful capabilities of the OneNote class notebook in a class team to be able to then do some of those assignment grading and improvements around workflow and keeping in a singular place to be able to focus on feedback for students. But this is where I'd like to now take a time to be able to go through the Moodle app available within Teams as a vision of what's possible with LMSs as they create apps for Teams. And so what we're going to see here is the Moodle app does 3 very powerful things. Firstly, it is an app that's privately available to the organization. What it then does is it automatically provisions and synchronizes the enrollments for the Moodle course that has been selected. And it'll also pre-install the Moodle Tab, as well as it also can provide an assistant. And this assistant uses natural language to be able to then provide insights into the course itself. Now, the important requirement here is, of course, that you're already using the Office 365 integration with Moodle. So this is something that's been available for quite some time. And then what this does is it allows Office 365 and Moodle to work together. The Moodle app will then provide additional capabilities within the context of Teams, such as the Moodle Tab. What the Moodle Tab does is it allows you to embed then a view of your course page directly in the team, and it also allows single sign-on. So you had seen previously when I added a website tab into the team, I still did need to sign in, whereas this automatically detects who I am because I've logged into Teams, and then allows me to single sign on to see the Moodle page that I have permissions to view. So you'll see here, we go in, we click Add, Moodle, and what this allows us to do is select our Moodle course, in this example, Mechanics of Solids. It then gives me a view of that Moodle course page directly embedded within Teams. I can scroll through, I can click on, for example, problem sets and other information that's here. If there is a file or an experience that needs to, it will take me back to the Moodle course page in the web browser. I can have a conversation in the context. So again, by clicking that message bubble, and this is some of those real-time, very powerful tools where we see Teams so well equipped to then help teachers and students have more active learner communities to improve collaboration and communication with students. You'll see here I can then do an @mention and do a notification, which will go out to all of my students. Where this is so powerful is this will then do a real-time push notification to their mobile device as well as also to their laptop. And in real time, they can have a conversation, ask questions. And this is where we've seen Teams become a very powerful tool to create engaged active learner communities as part of these tools that are provided within Teams, while then you still have access to all of those fantastic resources in your LMS, for example here, Moodle. Now that tab allows you to access your resources. The Moodle Assistant bot is optional, so if you do not have access to Azure, which is a requirement for the Moodle bot, it is separate, but one of the fantastic things is if you do set it up, and which I certainly would recommend, is it allows you to then be able to use natural language to ask questions of the data within Moodle. So what that looks like is you can go through, and here's a few of the suggested questions, that it will do things like, for example, which of my students have made a late submission. It'll go through, look at the data within Moodle, and then come back and give me insight into which of my students maybe submitted an assignment late. Now, this is detecting information and it's based on my user profile, whether or not I can ask a question as a professor or teacher compared to a student. But again, these are all of the insights available if I was to log into Moodle, go through and then see, for example, student activity. The Moodle Assistant bot is providing an artificial intelligent layer over the top of it so I can interact with that data using natural language as opposed to having to click through a series of menus. This does require Azure services because it is using the cognitive services behind the scenes to help host and power the bot. But this is incredibly powerful then as one of those optional extras that's part of the Moodle app when you add it into Teams. Now, one of the other big areas where we've seen a lot of universities, schools, and colleges ask for is integration with Teams and then plagiarism checking tools for assignments. And so this is where the assignment service in Teams allows you to have a really rich experience of rubric grading, the ability to then give students meaningful feedback, automated marking using, for example, Microsoft Forms. But what about if you have a plagiarism checking tool such as Embed or Turnitin? And so this is where we've seen some of the most popular, I should say, tools to help manage plagiarism checking within education are integrating then directly into the assignment service within Teams. And so this is where we have the ability to now have Turnitin as part of the assignment review workflow, and it'll give you then the similarity score. Of course, this does require that you do have a license to be able to use Turnitin for your institution. But once you've done that, you've then got the ability to integrate Turnitin directly within the assignment workflow within Teams. And this is one of the brand new features that we have announced and is currently coming out very soon. And we also have the ability then, depending where you are around the world, some of the other extremely popular platforms, Embed is also a popular plagiarism checking tool, which is also available, which similar to Turnitin will give you then a similarity score, which you can view within Teams as part of your assignment and your class workflow. So how do we see the different apps available for Teams? Well, head across to the App Store built directly into Teams next time you're in the web browser or on your laptop, whether it's a MacBook or Windows laptop, and click on that store on the left-hand side of the app bar. Here you're going to see hundreds of applications that are available. And again, remember, this is an app store just like your smartphone. Some apps are paid, some apps are free. It is up to those app developers, but always do reach out to an app developer if you don't see an app here yet. But some of the ones that you saw just a moment ago, like Haldor Plagiarism Checker, you can then bring that directly into your classroom to help then manage things like plagiarism checking, popular apps like Wakelet to help teachers share content easily within their classrooms and as part of their professional learning communities, and hundreds of more applications also that we see being used within business contexts, so things like GitHub, Bitbucket, and Jira if we're teaching things like computer science skills. There are many applications in that app store and it's continuously growing. So highly recommend that you do go and check it out. And this is where we then have a chance to really bring it all together from what we've just seen. So this is where we really see Teams as the hub to connect everybody across a variety of different scenarios, whether it's a school district, a college, or a university, across these key pillars of your institution. Heading over to then a resource to help you get started if you're still new to Teams, or to help you then continue your adoption in your organization, we have a tool as part of the Microsoft Educator community called Teams University. So simply visit the URL aka.ms/Teams University, and this is then a series of free content available to help with things like class automation, as well as also many of the other resources that we make available to help organizations adopt Teams for education. Thanks for joining today. There'll be more sessions coming up. All the best.